31st of October 2022. This skidmark is something that I have been thinking about a lot, and I've been sitting on this document for just over 2 weeks. Someone sent me the link to the letter, and it was on a Telegram channel, and I read through it, and there's a lot of information in there that I had to digest, and I was reluctant to publish the thing. But during the past 2 weeks, things happened, and I got more information about other things in the Ukraine, and more the letter started making sense to me. So earlier today I published a skidmark under the title Ukraine War for Dummies, and I would suggest that you take a look at that skidmark as well, and because the two relate a lot. In that one I gave a lot of explanations and gave some maps and showed maps and things like that. And this one I will not be doing that, because this is going to be quite lengthy, because it's quite a letter. Now, to give you some background on the letter, the writer is a member of the Spetsnaz team that operates in the Ukraine, and that is one of the elite special forces units of Russia. And this guy wrote this letter to his mother. Now, take into consideration that there might be some of the words and so that may sound a little bit weird, because it's a translation from Russian to English that I am looking at. So we have to give some leeway to translation. And at the end of this program, I will put the more complete pages up in this video, so that you can pause the video and read through it at your own time and own pace. For now I will be using snips. I did an adjustment to the letter in that I numbered the paragraphs, but I did that just so that it is easier for me to manage. And one of the things that really made me think a lot was about that giant cargo plane that they blew up. Now, if you listen to this letter and you look at that other video of mine, you will understand a lot of things that we got in pieces, and you will see how it links together. The one thing that is quite clear, and that is that the Western media and the West in general is absolutely clueless about what the Russians are actually doing in the Ukraine and what they did from the beginning. And they just gave their own interpretations and assumptions and things like that. But and they made stupid statements like the Russians are struggling, and the Russians has got no plan, and all of things like that. But let's go with the letter. Hi Mom, I am traveling from Iver now, and there's an opportunity to talk about Putin and his actions as a leader. Clearly everyone thinks about themselves that they are great strategists, while observing a fight from the outside. We all imagine from afar that if I were him, I'd do this, that and that. However, we don't have all the information. We do not get daily intelligence briefings as to what is happening in all corners of our country, not just in Donbass. Quite powerful players with serious intelligence and technical capabilities are playing against Putin. Ukraine is run by Great Britain and the USA, who provide them with all satellite intelligence. AWACS airplanes fly over the Black Sea and provide full coordinates for all facilities, including oil derricks and soon. So we are being fought against by the collective West, and the first and foremost the USA and Great Britain. and they would like for Europe to pay for all of this. There's a few truths in that we are aware of. They wish to solve a few problems at once, to weaken, to reduce the level of influence of Europe, to push Europe as far back from Russia as possible. And it would be desirable to create some kind of a unified country between Europe and Russia, arbitrarily called anti-Russia. In order to achieve this, Poland, Ukraine and the Baltic states must be unified. Currently, they are trying to manipulate the situation in different ways to gradually converge on having the elites of Ukraine and the Baltic states unite with Poland into some kind of a confederation or a federation. They are now quickly rewriting laws in order to allow Polish citizens, officials, prosecutors and others to work in Ukraine without any limitations. The same will now be done in the Baltic states. Lithuania has started acting up by closing the transit way to Kaliningrad, thus provoking Russia to take some actions in response, in order to further convince those who are still in doubt that the Baltic states must join this three-way union against Russia at all costs. Now I'm going to show you a map quickly that I used in my other video that I published a little bit earlier. And on this map I have indicated this so-called anti-Russia federation. If they manage to drive in such a wedge between Europe and Russia, Europe will stop developing and her abilities will be reversed. Europe will gradually decline and go broke, while Russia, without contact with Europe, will respectively face certain difficulties because while possessing a strong raw material and resource base, we won't have access to various technologies that Europeans, namely the Swiss, the Germans and the Austrians, were able to advance in. There was an idea to create a common economic space from Lisbon to the Far East, and as such, we would have had a strong geopolitical influence in the Eurasian continent. However, as you see, the British and Americans are taking all possible measures in order to not allow this to happen. And it is important to take note of what he is saying here about what is going to happen to Europe. I also think that he wrote this letter before it became clear that India and China and Saudi Arabia is firmly behind Russia, as well as Korea and most of the eastern countries. So yes, there's a loss of technology, but they're getting the technology from other sources. Clearly, liberating Ukraine from Nazism as a forced measure, because it was obvious that they would have carried out their plan on their own very soon. They had prepared their most powerful airplane, Mriya, the heavy lifter at Gostomel Airport, to carry out a strike on Rostov-on-Don. That is why our airborne troops landed there, took the stuffing out of Mriya and took it to Russia. Those were components of a dirty nuclear bomb that was supposed to be used above Rostov-on-Don. Ukraine had planned to attack Donbass and Russia was supposed to step in. In fact, the fighting was supposed to take place on the border because they would have made it to the Russian border in 2 to 3 days by crushing Donbass, and a very serious force was being concentrated there. 250,000 armed and trained soldiers. Now it's important to take note of that, and that is one of the reasons why the Russians jumped into Ukraine on the 24th of February because they knew that the Ukraine were planning on striking the Donbass. In response, Russia would have started an operation to protect Donbass, but this would in fact be happening in Russia or on the border between the DNR and Rostov or Belgorod regions, respectively. Ukraine would be screeching for the world to hear, "We are under attack. Russia has crossed the border," and she would take everything she had to the skies, including the Embraer airplane, and strike Rostov with a dirty bomb, thus destroying the Black Earth region, Rostov, Krasnodar and Donetsk. The goal was to make sure that Russia couldn't use these lands to feed herself and others in the future. A fairly serious food crisis is coming up. The conductors of this crisis believe that if the land is poisoned for an extended period of time, for the next 20, 30 to 50 years, then Russia won't have such a powerful trump card, which is the fact that she supplies half of the world, half of humanity with bread. So as a result, we started the operation in advance. Of course, perhaps we weren't entirely prepared for it, but we had no choice. First of all, we took the stuffing out of Gostomel. We took everything out of Chernobyl that they tried to do there and gain control over Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. So all the places where they tried to develop their nuclear program were taken under control. We took everything out. Further, there was an idea that by surrounding Kiev, we would be able to force the Ukrainian elites to rise up in a certain way, as well as the so-called pro-Russian elites, such as Medvedchuk and so on, who could have theoretically led the new and reformed Ukraine. That was Plan A. However, Plan A failed. As is usual with the cockles, that out of 3 people are always traitors. The same happened here. As the Kiev elites became scared, became terrified, the West clicked its tongue at them, and that was it. They rolled back. Nobody had started any uprising in Kiev. They didn't bring the keys to Kiev out for us. That's when Plan B went into action. Plan B consisted of the systematic destruction of the entire military infrastructure and the slow and gradual finishing off of the rest of it. Therefore, we rolled back. The troops were pulled back to a friendly territory where we had no evil rear. We know that those behind us won't shoot us in the back. We created this powerful horseshoe and we suck all their forces in there, everything that they are willing to throw at us. In other words, this is where we are slowly grinding down their military forces. They keep throwing new reinforcements, new weapons in there. The West keeps throwing whatever it can in there. However, we are sustaining much lower losses, considerably lower losses, about an order of magnitude lower as opposed to what we would have been sustaining had we been advancing on Kiev or Zaporizhzhia. As we are slowly and calmly destroying all of their military infrastructure, including attempting to destroy the maximum number of highly trained troops, when only territorial defense forces consisting of insane people with sticks and machine guns remain, it will get easier. Our next goal will be Nikolaev, Odessa. Ukraine must be cut off from the Black Sea at all costs, because our Black Sea fleet is not safe as long as Ukraine has access to the Black Sea, and we'll have access to Transnistria. Transnistria will also be in the safety zone. We'll protect our people there. And then, more likely than not, it would be bad if we could perform a powerful unified advance together with Belarus from 2 sides, with Belarus from the north and us from the south. From Transnistria to cut Ukraine off its western border, from Poland and Romania. In other words, to fully block Ukraine from all western deliveries. That would be the moment, starting with in which order could be calmly restored. The elites would be replaced. The bloodsuckers that have terrorized Ukraine for the last 8 years would be jailed, and so on. Of course, understanding all these plans, the West will play various dirty tricks. They will cause an uproar in Lithuania, may try to pounce on Kaliningrad. They will most probably likely pounce on Transnistria through Romania. Romanians will creep through Moldova, and Poland will creep onto Ukrainian territory with an ostensibly peacekeeping mission, trying to overtake, to bite off at least the western regions of Ukraine. Thus, quite serious clashes with the NATO bloc is possible. Clearly, one must not rush at this point. Putin is not throwing the newest weapons into the battle. At this point, he is using only old tanks such as the T-62s, T-70s, T-80s. It seems that the T-90s breakthrough has now been observed in Donbass. However, it seems to me that only older equipment is being used now, primarily in order to dispose of it, because disposal is expensive, and secondly because there's plenty of it to grind through everything the Ukraine is capable of putting against it. However, when the NATO bloc creeps in, we must have powerful reserves in order to deal with the NATO bloc in all seriousness. Nothing will stop with just Ukraine. This is just the beginning, and fairly serious messes in the future. Therefore, all those who are now yelling, let's strike on Kiev now, well, yes, perhaps it would be great to do so now, while running on emotions, but that would bring a certain level of chaos into the control of the operation. In other words, we could destroy the command centers and remove the insane cockles. However, as the next step, NATO would have to take action to take control over Ukraine and to start controlling everything on its own, which would make it more difficult for us. Therefore, it's better to keep dealing with these morons. Let them control those troops while we are grinding them down. When the time comes, the morons in Kiev will be dealt with. It seems it's too early to do so now. Therefore, it's clear that the people of Donbass are suffering. Donetsk is suffering, but there are the last months of their suffering. More likely than not, the stronghold in Avdiivka will be surrounded and destroyed, and Donetsk will be in a deep rear, like Mariupol is now. Nobody is touching or bombing Mariupol now. Donetsk will be liberated someday. Clearly, there are people tired of the war. There are people who hate Russians because they didn't help in the right way, not quickly enough, not fast enough. But it is not everyone. There is a certain journalist named Anatoly Shary, who people are currently interviewing people in Mariupol, and he posts them on YouTube. The majority, about 95% of the city residents, speak of Azov fighters with hatred. They speak about the crimes that they committed in the city. There are no words of anger or hate towards Russians who liberated them. There's a regret that the city was destroyed, that people had lost their apartments. However, in general, most people are in high spirits because the future holds no darkness that was lingering over them. The same will now be felt by the people in Melitopol and Kherson, in Tokmak, in liberated areas. They will see that life in Russia is much more fair, honest and better than under the rule of the Nazis. They will have better social safety net programs, better retirement support. They will have a functioning electrical and gas infrastructure. They will not have such high utility bills. At the end result, they will feel that there is a chance for the better, and gradually even the skeptics will calm down. For now, everyone must remain patient, and one can only wish for Putin to remain patient. He has a very serious and difficult job because very serious players are up against him, including the domestic fifth column. the bankers and social leaders, the liberal bloc of the government, and so on. All of these desire to somehow roll back to the past as everything was just peachy and everything was fine. We had our palaces, our families, our airplanes, our yachts. What are you doing, Putin? What have you done to us? You cut off our oxygen supply. Clearly, this is where he'll have to replace the elites. And if that is to be done, it must be gradually done, starting now, with the support of the power bloc, gradually changing the attitudes within the society in order to bring about powerful societal deemed for change within Russia. And that could result in us actually making it, because this is a war for life or death. We will not be allowed to step aside saying, let's just leave everything as is, let's go back to February 24th. The West is on a mission to grind us into fine powder, rip us to shreds, reduce us to the level where we become completely harmless to them. They deeply regret that they were unable to complete this work under Yeltsin and Gorbachev. They had relaxed as they thought they had already won, clapping Yeltsin on the shoulder and laughing at him, thinking that they had Russia in their pocket. And suddenly it became clear that they made a grave mistake by relaxing too early, by believing in their victory too early. Now they are reaping bitter fruits. And we have just two options, return with the shield or on the shield. Either we put them back in their place and eventually mark our borders with red lines beyond which they cannot stick their noses, or we roll back to the liberal darkness. And that's when they would obtain another colony to rob for the next 50 years or so, and live prosperously and richly by ransacking our country. Thus, I think we all need to consolidate and help each other in one way or another. Currently, the All People's Front is collecting money on their website. There is a button to transfer money. People do transfer money. Yesterday, an announcement was made at my work. Everybody gave what they could, and there were 65 million rubles collected by evening in order to help the armies of the Donetsk and Lugansk. This financial support is meant to buy the guys bulletproof vests, necessary weapons, drones and so on, because they are basically a militia. Clearly the Ministry of Defense provided them with a bit of weapons and some uniforms. However, hopefully there are sufficient supplies for our own army. So it's better that people unite to help. This is how it was during the Great Patriotic War, World War II. People helped to the best of their abilities, worked in the factories and so on. It is the same now. Don't stay away as if it is not our war. It is just someone fighting somewhere and we're going out for coffee and dancing. When Russia participated in the Russian-Japanese war, similar attitudes were prevalent in the society. This is not our war. This is happening somewhere far. As a result, we lost that war. Neither the people nor the elites understood the point of the war and did not support it. The same took place in 1914 during World War I. As everybody relaxed, which almost led to the country breaking apart. However, during the Great Patriotic War, the government managed to organize a society to consolidate it. The entire fifth column was cleansed out. People recall 1937, but that was a forced measure. All people who could be working for the enemy were removed from power from all dangerous facilities. All those who were loyal to the country, to the motherland, and who were ready to shred the enemy with their teeth remained. And as a result, after resisting for 4 years, we really did shred them. The unified Europe was defeated. The entire Europe, short of Greece and Serbia, worked for Hitler. Currently the same is happening, only now Greece is also against us, with just Serbia being for us. Thus it's practically the same attack on us, and we must stand up to it. Therefore, whether some approve or disapprove of Putin's politics, whether they support it or not, it doesn't matter now. We must be shoulder to shoulder here domestically. We'll figure it out later. For now, the mission is to win the war. And I have a suspicion that this letter was written around about April, May. because some of the things that he is mentioning here has already changed and played out and so forth. But it was, to me, there's a lot of things in there, and I'm going to say it again. Please look at my other video that I did on this topic, and it was done under the title The Ukraine War for Dummies. But for now, think about this. I'm going to put up the full pages. There is 4 pages, and I'm going to put them up in sequence, and I'll put up page 1, and then I'll put up page 2 and page 3 and page 4, and then you can pause the video and read through through the letter at your own leisure. But when you read these things, have an open mind and think about what the guy is saying, and think about the things that has already happened. As I said, I have a suspicion this letter was written in April, because some of the things that he's talking about is now happening, or has already happened. We can see how the relationship between Poland and Kiev has been changing. There's laws was changed, and all of those things has been done. So that dark forces in Washington and in London, their plan of creating that buffer zone, what they will call anti-Russia, that they are working on it. They are definitely working on it. And I cannot understand that the citizens of Europe is so blindly following those leaders of theirs. That leadership core and that cabal in Brussels is definitely part and parcel of that evil structure that wants to destroy Europe. And on that note, please hit me with a like and a subscribe and a share, and thank you for your support.